Okay, cold open today to inform everybody that I got a microphone. I'm so excited because I was recording on the stupid mic out of my headphones and it didn't work very well. So now I actually have a microphone and it has the little circle of stuff in front of it that protects it or whatever. I don't even know. But I have a microphone and it's so pretty, and I'm so excited to finally record an episode on a microphone and hopefully not hate my audio all the time. So, yeah, that is why I have a cold open. I just wanted to inform everybody of my excitement and the fact that I got a microphone. This is a Global Tellink prepaid call from Adnan Syed, an inmate at a Maryland correctional facility. Okay, I get it. I'm not Sarah Koenig. This isn't Serial. I've just always really wanted to say that because every time I hear that, I always say it with the introduction of Serial. So I didn't think it'd be fitting to start this podcast off with anything else. And I get it. A podcast about a podcast. How meta. But I feel like I've been doing a lot of books recently and I felt like switching it up. So I was like, hey, why not do a podcast? I mean, I love podcasts, obviously. I'm making one, right? You can't, make a podcast without liking podcasts and listening to podcasts. And Serial is one of my favorite podcasts, so I decided to delve deep into Serial and what I love about it. Now, I'm only doing season 1 of Serial because I'm not going to say it's the best season of Serial, but it's the best season of Serial. But for those of you who don't know season 1 of Serial, first of all, do you live under a rock? Because when it first came out on October 3rd, 2014, it blew up the internet, podcasting world, I guess. It blew up. It follows Adnan Syed, who was accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Hae Min Lee. And he was accused when he was either 17 or 18 and has been in prison since. And he's now, in his mid-30s. So he spent a majority of his life in prison. And the facts are kind of sketchy, which is why Sarah Koenig looked into it. And it brought a lot of controversy and opinions of people. Did they believe Adnan's side? Did they believe the other people's side? Did they believe the police and what he said? So, yeah, it was really interesting, and it spanned 13 episodes. She did this huge deep dive into everything that happened, and it's just really amazing and really great journalism and a really great podcast. And if you haven't listened to it, what are you doing with your life? You shouldn't be listening to my podcast when there's much better quality podcasts out there. Not that I don't want you to listen to my podcast, but you should definitely listen to Serial. It's one of my favorites, one in my top 5 podcast ever. So yeah, books, TV, music, and movies, all things that make a big impact on everyone. I'm constantly gushing about my latest read to anyone who will listen, so I figured I'd turn my rambling into something coherent that people will actually listen to. That means no tuning out halfway through. I am Maya Ghosh, and this is my take. Okay, now obviously Serial is not a book, so there's no writing I can analyze. Technically I'm pretty sure it's scripted, so I could go into all of the stuff that she wrote and how it was scripted and how it was played out, but I don't want to do that because that's a lot of work. And if I'm honest, it's been a year since I've listened to the podcast all the way through, but I do remember a ton of the details and stuff, so I'm just going off of that as opposed to going back and looking at the writing and the scripting, and that's too much work. Now, as I said in the intro, I'm not saying it's the best season, but it is the best season. To begin with, it has the best version of the theme music. Season 2 and season 3 are kind of cool, they change it up and stuff, but just the classic feel of the season 1 theme music is the best. If you haven't listened to it, you need to listen to it. It's so good. I love it. peak podcast theme music. And also season 1 has the best storyline. Like, season 3 follows a bunch of different courtrooms in, I want to say, Ohio, and how the justice system works in Ohio. And the reason Sarah Koenig did that is because a bunch of people asked her what the Adnan Syed case could teach them about the justice system. But she was like, one extraordinary case like Adnan's can't really teach you a lot about the justice system. But if you looked at regular, ordinary cases that happen every day, it could teach you a lot about the justice system. And so that's why she went and she did a whole thing on Ohio. And that was interesting. It just was a different feel because I was so used to Serial following, like, one main character, right? Like, you had Adnan in the beginning. And even in season 2, you had Bo Bergdahl, right? And it was one character and one story, and everybody else kind of branched out, right? If you're doing, like, a mind map of that season, everything would center around Adnan or Bo. Whereas in the courtroom, there's so many different stories and so many different people, and yes, there are recurring themes and recurring people, but it just wasn't as interesting as having one solid concrete thing. There also was a lack of ambiguity to season 3, because with Adnan, she never made a judgment. She never said, oh, I think he's guilty, I think he's innocent, I think he's telling the truth about this, I think he's lying about this, right? She never really said that. She just said, this is what we know. Same thing with Bo. It was like, did he walk off his post? Was he taken and kidnapped? I don't really know. Actually, I don't know for sure. But, like, even then, even if she had said, I think for sure, which I don't think she did because Sarah Koenig is better than that, there was still an ambiguity because Bo kept saying, this is what happened, and everybody else kept saying, right? There's so many conflicting storylines, but with court cases, there's less ambiguity to what's going on, especially when you're looking at the inner workings of the justice system. There's very clear statistics and facts, and you can look at patterns, right? So it just lacks this ambiguity. Also, in the beginning, like in the intro of every episode, she had to change it from one story told week by week to one courthouse told week by week, which change is hard, okay? And I really like the one story told week by week tagline. So I was not very happy with the one courthouse week by week, but I mean, it obviously made sense. It had to be that because it is one courthouse and not one story, which I guess points to why I didn't like it as much, because it wasn't following one concrete story. It was following more of a broader idea. Not that it wasn't good, it just wasn't what I had known Serial to be. Now, with the Bo Bergdahl case, which was season 2, it was fine, but it wasn't, like, that interesting. Maybe it's because he walked off or deserted or whatever happened. He was missing in 2010, and it could be because at the time I was 8 and I didn't really understand the gravity of the situation and how our army has the policy of, leave no man behind and all of that stuff. It could be that, but it also just could be like, so what? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't get it. Maybe I, need to understand the gravity of the situation more, but it lacked that intrigue that Adnan's case had. Also, Sarah didn't directly talk to Bo. She was listening to recordings another reporter had taken interviewing Bo. So it was like what's the thing? A secondary source? Is that what history teachers would call it? Yeah, a secondary source, because she was not getting the information straight. She was getting a told version of it. Anyways, it also kind of made it feel less real that Sarah wasn't directly talking to him and couldn't fire back at what he was saying and stuff. Whereas, like, with Adnan, she logged so many hours on the phone with him, and, like, she just knew him better and made more of a connection with him, which I think was really cool. And his case was just so whack that it was fun. I mean, there were so many different things that happened in the case and so many different opinions, like Rabia firmly believing that Adnan is innocent, and Deirdre Enright, yeah, her, and her law students believing that he's innocent, but then the cops and, him and Lee's family, and just the multiple different perspectives that you can get on the case, I think, are really cool. And I'm sure you see that in the other two seasons. I'm just biased. I love season 1. So yeah, basically, season 1 is the best season, and I love it, and that's why we're only talking about season 1 in this episode. But I'm sure I could be persuaded to listen to all, 13 hours of season 2 and do a season 2 if that was something you guys wanted to hear. So moving away from, the comparison of the seasons, I've listened to season 1 way too many times. I half listened to it when it first came out with my dad, and then I was told it wasn't appropriate for 12-year-old me to listen to. So I snuck listened to it on my own, and then I finally fully listened to it a couple years later. And then I listened to it one more time off and on. And then last year for school, I wrote a paper on the fact that Adnan was appealing. Adnan has appealed his decision on the Asia claims because, for those of you who don't know, Asia McClain was a girl who went to high school with Adnan and claimed to see him at the library at the time of the killings. And she wrote Adnan letters, and Adnan had told his initial defense attorney, Cristina Gutierrez, about Asia, but Asia was never contacted. And so Adnan was appealing, I think on ineffective assistance counsel or something like that, that Christina should have at least contacted Asia and made a point to track down an alibi witness. Now, there are differing opinions of thought. Some people think, if it's not going to be that helpful, the lawyer doesn't have to look into it. Whereas others think, no, no matter what happens, the lawyer has a responsibility to their client to look into what was going on. So Adnan filed a claim based on that, and the judge in 2016 ruled to vacate his conviction and give him a new trial. Now, even though his conviction was vacated, he was still in prison, but it was a major step up in the fact that he was going to get a new trial, after Serial and all this evidence, and he had a new, better attorney, and so that was a huge deal. But the state of Maryland decided they were going to appeal that decision, and then in 2019, the process had started. Actually, I think it was November of 2018, the process of that appeal had started, and then the verdicts came out in March of 2019. But basically, we had been given an assignment to write an argumentative essay on a controversial topic, and I picked basically whether Adnan was guilty or innocent as my topic, but I used the fact that it was getting appealed in 2018, 2019 as my leverage to then say that it was a current controversial topic, because that was one of the requirements, was it couldn't be abortion, which had a ruling in 1973, right? It had to be something current. So that was the last time I listened to the podcast all the way through, because I needed evidence to support my argument, so I listened to the whole entirety of the podcast. I say I was doing it for school. I really was just having a good time listening to the podcast. But yeah, that shows my depth of love for Serial, is that I found a way to work it into a school project. So yeah, of all of the whack things that surround Adnan's case, the biggest I think is whose side do you believe, Adnan versus Jay? Because Jay's testimony was crucial in getting Adnan convicted, and Jay is shady himself. So it's do you believe what Jay is saying, or do you believe what Adnan is saying? And I don't know who I believe. I want to believe Adnan, and I want to believe that he didn't do it. But my question is, where does Jay get off? Because, for somebody like Jay, who has a criminal, I don't know if he had a criminal record, but he was smoking weed and that was illegal and stuff like that. So for somebody like Jay, why would you want to voluntarily put yourself in the way of cops and prosecutors to pin somebody for a murder? So that's my thing, is why would he lie? So then he must not be lying. But then isn't Adnan telling the truth too? It's a whole thing. I keep jumping fence to fence. I jump from the non-fence to the J fence all the time. I don't think either of them are being completely honest. And I hate that Adnan has no recollection of the day because, like, you're living in the age, which I guess he is a teenage boy, so diaries weren't a thing. But still, you're living in the early 2000s, well, 1990, early 2000s, of diaries and all that kind of stuff. So, like, why are you not keeping a diary? Why are you not writing down what happens in your day? Like, I write down what happens in my day all the time. Granted, today, if something had happened, I could scroll back through my pictures or scroll back through social media and see if anything significant happened. But it's just annoying that he has all of no recollection of the day, which makes it harder to believe in Nan. But, you know, we gotta do what we gotta do. There's also, like, the Nisha versus the Asia thing, because the Nisha call seems really bad for Adnan, but then the Asia thing seems really good for Adnan. And obviously the Nisha call, like, it happened, right? Like, there is fact proving her phone called his phone at this time, and it very likely is not, you know, a butt dial answering machine thing. I don't entirely remember what Sarah Koenig found on that, but it's very likely that she actually made the call and stuff. So that seems bad for Adnan, but then, like, Nisha wouldn't know that Adnan didn't have his phone. So if Nisha called looking for Adnan and got Jay and was just chatting, like, oh, where's Adnan? And Jay was like, yeah, he, you know, loaned me his car, and then I dropped him at track and stuff. Like, that chatting could go on for a couple minutes if you're two high schoolers just chit-chatting, right? Like, I mean, they called a lot more on phones back in the 90s and 2000s because they didn't have text and stuff. So it kind of makes sense that, like, maybe her and Jay were just chatting, but then it's like, but why would her and Jay just be chatting? Like, it just is a mess. And then the Asia thing, Asia flip-flopped so many times because she said she saw Adnan, and then when attorneys looked to contact her later after Adnan had been convicted, she changed her statement and didn't want to talk to anybody, but then she reversed that and was like, no, I know I saw Adnan. So it's like, girl, how many times are you going to change your story? Why do you keep changing your story? And it was just annoying because I was like, if you saw Adnan, stick to the fact that you saw Adnan. If you didn't see Adnan, say you were lying and you didn't actually see him, or you don't remember and you know, just wanted to put yourself in it because you were 17 and looking to be, you know, a little more popular by being involved with this case. Like, just pick a side and stick with it, girl. Like, there's so many different things that go on in this thing. And the guy who found Hayes' body is kind of whack because, first of all, he's drinking and driving. Like, mans goes home from his job, gets a beer, is drinking beer on the way back to said job, and then on an 8-minute drive has to stop to take a pee in the middle of the woods? Like, how much are you gonna drink from the time you get home to the time you're, like, halfway through an 8-minute drive? Like, I would just step on it and drive and get there faster and, like, use a bathroom. Like, why are you trying to pee in the woods? And, like, how do you have that quick turnaround on your bladder? And, like, it seems fishy that he just stumbled upon Hayes' body with the circumstances. Now, he could be lying, he could be saying that he was doing other things. I mean, he was a streaker, I'm pretty sure, so, like, he could have been streaking through the woods and wanted to cover up his story. But still, it's just, he's a little sketchy, and I don't entirely trust him. Yeah, also, like, Sarah and Dana driving the route that Adnan supposedly took and, like, testing out, like, when Adnan said on Dateline, and they're all, like, recreate these things, and they are like, this crime could not have been completed in this amount of time, and then they did that. They took Adnan's challenge, and they drove the bus loop, and they did it, which I am very sketchy. I am a high school student. I know high school parking lots. I am very surprised they're able to get out of that bus loop that quickly because it's hard sometimes. Like, there's only one day a week where my school lets everybody out at the same time, and that day is a madhouse in the parking lot. And if you're not, like, sprinting to your car you're gonna get stuck. Like, there have been times where I've gotten to my car a minute after the bell rang and I've been out fine. And there have been times I've gotten to my car like 3 minutes after the bell rang and I've been stuck there for 15 minutes. When I didn't even have to wait for like a bus loop or anything. They were just stupid parents being stupid. So it's like, I refuse to believe that the bus loop clears that quick. But, they're the ones that actually did it, so we'll let it slide. I trust Sarah and Dana. But just the fact that they did that and they went, like, that extra mile to actually do that and looking up this case, that was really cool. And all the cell phone data and analysis, like, I applaud Dana for learning all of that and looking into that, because I'm not technological and I could never, like, spend my entire day or, like, all of my hours at my job looking into cell phone data analysis. I would go insane out of boredom, because I'm sure it is not a very exciting topic, especially, with early 2000s technology. Geez. And honestly, just the whole complexity of who do we believe, what's really going on, and if not Adnan, who else did this? Like, that really has such an intrigue power and makes season 1 of Serial so gripping, and just, I love it so much because of the characters and the story, but also because of Sarah Koenig and her reporting. Like, I look up to her and I wish I could have her podcasting skills and her voice. Girl has an amazing, beautiful podcast sounding voice that, like, is simultaneously calming and exciting. Like, it could pump you up and it could also lull you to sleep. I would know I have fallen asleep listening to Serial many a night. And the impact that she made with this podcast. I mean, it grabbed national attention and brought it to Adnan's case. And I'm pretty sure it's because of that national attention that he won his appeal and that he was able to appeal and able to reach out to Asia. And the fact that it spurred on a really great 4-part HBO series that allowed us to see the setting of, Woodlawn High School in Baltimore and all of this stuff, and, like, see more people involved in the case. Like, that was really cool. And so if you haven't seen the HBO series, you really should go watch it. I think it's called The Case Against Adnan Syed. It's so good. I love it. And honestly, like, this is real talk. If I could go back in time, I would go back and follow Hae Min Lee around on that day and see what the hell actually happened to her, because I want to know. Like, this is one of the great mysteries of my life, having been so invested in listening to this podcast, is that I really want to know just what the hell happened to her. I don't care if it means Adnan's guilty. I just want to know what happened. I mean, don't we all? I have been Maya Ghosh, and this has been my take on season 1 of the hit podcast Serial. Thanks for listening.